So, good afternoon, you guys. I just watched Jim Cornette talk about the Swerve Strickland Hangman Adam Page match. I know a lot of people were really excited about what Jim Cornette has to say because there's always a level of roasting in what he says, and then also too that he's been really cerebral about AEW, and I think that a lot of people like that for two reasons. That obviously there are some issues with the company, and it's always good to hear somebody really honest because with Simon Miller when AEW got first started, he did a bunch of ups and downs where he just gave AEW like always the golden up and everything like that. So you kind of needed somebody that was like, okay, I'm not gonna suck the dick of AEW, nor am I gonna suck the dick of WWE or other wrestling shows that he reviews. And I think people respect Cornette for that, being unapologetic. And he was definitely unapologetic with this match. He was saying things like, you know, he just found what he just like said, like, he thought Swerve was cool and he praised Swerve. And really after this match, it really hurt Swerve and he lost a lot of respect for Swerve because there were some things like, a lot of logic holes. Like, obviously, the whole storyline with Adam Page, burning down Swerve's house, and the fact that if you were to tell a realistic story and Cornette aims for realism, you would not have you would have to kind of incorporate an arrest and other things like that, really. So he's not happy that the story doesn't have a lot of logic holes. But then again, he was being a hypocrite when it was the Undertaker versus AJ Styles, and he said he hates teleportation, but then he says, in this case, I'm going to make a pass because obviously the Undertaker's been set up as a mystic force. So there's a sense of hypocrisy. But then also, what I do agree with is that they had a match, and obviously spots like a bunch of slams onto a cinder block. I like what Cornette was saying about if these guys get injured for real, they definitely deserve a career-ending injury because obviously that's just a dangerous risk, or a risk that shouldn't be happening, because obviously if they want to be good wrestlers and think about what wrestling is about, like making money as long as possible, that's definitely counterproductive. It's just not worth taking a spot like that because there's ways to tell a very compelling story and do it in a way that's way safer, even though this is what they want to do. And then also, like, you look at Ricky Steamboat versus Ric Flair, or Dusty Rhodes versus Ric Flair, or other people versus Ric Flair. Like, they didn't have to do something like slams onto a cinder block or other things like that, because that could end somebody's career. And then he talked about Rick Rude, about how, he landed wrong on a blunt surface, and that ended the career of Rick Rude. So I can respect that with Jim Cornette. That obviously, I think that if I had a booker, I own a company, I had a booker that says, no, they're not going to do this match, they're not going to do all these hardcore stuff, we're actually going to do the same type of match, and we're actually going to do a different match, and they're going to have to agree to it. And it's not as dangerous, but it's going to keep them safe, and they're going to be good for years to come. I would think as a booker, I would want to have that match versus saying, okay, well, we want to work with a weed whacker, we want to work with C4, we want to work with cinder blocks, just like in Combat Zone Wrestling. Like, I would choose the first option, because obviously I would want my wrestlers to take less risk just so they can make money long term, really. So I can kind of understand Cornette's logic with that. I would also say that I like what he said about professional wrestling. Like, really, the art of professional wrestling is two people having a match and doing stuff that looks like it's going to hurt and selling them as hurt. Not two wrestlers having a match and doing dangerous stuff and you're not selling it as bad because they have to, continue on, or you care about shock value. And he was saying a couple other things too, that it's obviously, he's saying that AEW's a company that he was actually approached on booking decisions, and he kind of had a mentality of, okay, Tony Khan's just in his own hole. And then also too that he does feel it's counterproductive, and it shows that AEW possibly it'll take years and years for AEW to be in a good direction if they really cared about just ending all this and having good and compelling storytelling. It'll take years to kind of recover from something like this and retrain the audience. And then he also said, like, if they kind of continue down this path, that they're going, AEW is not destined to be successful in the future. So, it's definitely some hard hitting points, but it's like what Cornette says, and I think a lot of people will agree, and I can even agree that, there's definitely a lot of logic holes in this match. There's definitely spots that shouldn't have happened, and you could have told a story that would have worked and been compelling if you focused on logic holes and then also telling a match and having a match where you showcase these people as a celebrity, or you focus on Swerve being a celebrity and riding that momentum, not like what they did with Swerve, where he was over for a while in AEW and then they took him a long time to put the title on him. Like maybe after we had World's End, it should have been MJF versus Swerve, not MJF versus Samoa Joe, and then 3 or 4 months later you put the title on Swerve. And then the other thing too is that when you have matches like this, you have to really think about, what's really logical, and also the story they're telling, what's really logical. But it is a little hypocritical because there's been stories in WWE and other programming that's not logical, and Cornette looks the other way. Look at all this stuff with Bray Wyatt, or just look at the Firefly Funhouse Inferno match where Randy Orton burns Bray Wyatt alive. He comes back, or look at how with the Undertaker he has magical powers. He's not supposed to. His old gimmick is he's an undead zombie wizard biker king or something like that. So I can understand him being a little double standard with logic holes. I also will say that again he praised the Will Ospreay and Bryan Danielson match. When honestly two people wrestling like that for 30 or more minutes is out of touch with any form of reality. So I can understand that there's some hypocrisy in what he's saying. I also really agree with the glaring issue of Swerve and Hangman, that there was really no heel and babyface dynamic. Because, I think for a long time they were rivals, and then Swerve became the heel because he approached Adam Page's family, and then during the Texas Death Match, there was so much of people who wanted to be on Swerve's side, and Swerve was being like a heel and a lot of stuff. He was kind of like the heel getting over as a babyface. And then by Revolution time, they switched it where Adam Page is the heel, and then after Wembley Stadium, you had Swerve be the babyface and Adam Page be the heel. And during this match, it really felt like there was no heel or babyface. It really felt like Adam Page, just at that moment in history, was doing more heel things, so he came off as a heel. So I do think that that's also not good, because there's really no sense of, okay, he's a heel and he beat Swerve in a very merciless way. So what's going to happen when Adam Page is unleashed on the roster? How's that going to impact, Bryan Danielson? How's that going to impact Will Ospreay? How's it going to impact Mark Briscoe with his ROH championship? How's that going to impact the other heels? Is he part of the Jon Moxley faction, or is he like the captain of it or something like that, really? So there could have been ways to do things a lot better, and I do agree with them on that. But I really think that what Cornette doesn't realize with AEW, they have different types of matches, really. So obviously the Will Ospreay matches are more the high flyer types. They have high flyer matches. They have the hardcore matches. They have the women's matches and other things like that. So I think it's a bit of a variety show. But I would also say that I think the arena was 17,000 people capacity, but only drew maybe over 8,000. So they were probably at 51% capacity. So even though you had those 8,000 people, that tells you something. Even though you have, I think they said that their ratings went up 8.6% or something. So if this stuff works and keeps pushing the ratings, AEW has to go down this direction. But if it's not working, like I've said, they really have to change foot if they care about money and all that. And it's kind of clear, as many people say, that you look at Tony Khan, he probably doesn't care about the money that he's wasting, or Shad Khan doesn't care. And as I said, that if Shad Khan's making so much revenue and he's worth close to $10 billion, if AEW's wasting $250 million a year and Shad has $10 billion, that's 40 years AEW can run if they want to go through $10 billion, if they're a $250 million a year company or something like that. Because there's OTRS and other people kind of contemplated that. But it's, again, I think that the ratings went up, and I think like from right now, from what we heard, it doesn't look like Swerve or Adam Page have career-ending injuries, and I think that what AEW knows is that they want to get to this point where we're getting in another match that's like death match style, that there has to be a story, there has to be a lot of things going into it versus just presenting it all the time, really, and I'm proud of that. Like this week you didn't see somebody go through a table, this week you didn't see somebody go through a burning table or other crap like that. So, it's a controversial match. I do side with many of Cornette's points. I do think, but I look at it not in the sense of cynicism against AEW. I think he's more cynical. I look at it as constructive criticism. I think there's ways that the match could have been safer and told a more compelling story, which would have drawn more money, but also made sure that everybody involved would walk away with less injuries or less pain or whatever, so that way they could have more matches long term, because the point of wrestling is, making money long term and all that. Like, so if Swerve does matches like this, he may retire in like 5 years, but if he's prevented and presented well, then he'll have matches as long as he wants to. He'll be like Jerry Lawler, had matches into his 70s. If he chose to, and he was kept from his worst instincts. So. And then also kind of talks about this thing about AEW where they kind of listen to a lot of the wrestlers' ideas. So sometimes that can be very helpful and move a person forward, and sometimes that can be very detrimental and just have a very, it's my art. I want to do something with my art approach, really. So there's definitely like a lot of interesting takes on this, but I do side with like the things that Cornette are saying more than I disagree with them.